Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good enough. Thanks, everybody, for being here. We are really excited about the turnout, beyond our expectations. Really happy to see such a big group here. I'm going to try to trip lightly through a bunch of things because I don't want to short shrift the awards. We do want to take a minute. Special thanks to our sponsors this year, Meritech, Instruments Direct, Ebtron, and TSI. All of them have sponsored our meetings, exhibited at our meetings before, but their support is really important. Their presence is really important. So do want to give them a thank you and an extra special thank you. So please thank you for those four. And then also thanks to our exhibitors, which include our four sponsors, as well as 8 additional companies. If you've noticed the last few years, even just before the pandemic, the exhibitor participation has been growing. We can see the interaction that you have with them. Always think it adds a ton to the meeting, so do really want to thank all of them for being here. And another applause for them briefly. They are an important part of this. And then lastly, we do have the AABC Industry Partner Program. This is an even larger group. A lot of the names are going to be familiar from the previous slides, but we have a lot of other organizations as well that are reaching out to us and looking to work with AABC, to talk to you, to interact with you as members. All of these are positive things. It's something the board focused on for a lot of years. It's really finally getting some traction. It's resulting in things like some webinars and other educational opportunities and other things that we're working with. So thank you to all of them as well that are here. If you know a good company that might be interested in being an industry partner, let us know at headquarters, and we will definitely try to initiate some communication with them and see if we can get them on board for that as well. And with that, we're going to move to the awards portion of the presentation, so kind of the fun stuff. The Outstanding Service Award is something that was created in 2021, just last year. And the idea of this was literally to recognize work over the previous year, you know, kind of annual meeting to annual meeting. Sometimes you get people that just step up and they've done a heck of a lot of work, you know, more than most for a particular year. And so kicked that off last year and had several recipients last year. And then this year, we have sort of 2 individual recipients and then sort of a group recipient. And I will say, I do have to apologize before I kick all of this off. We had a shipping snafu, and the actual Outstanding Service trophies, unfortunately, did not make it to us here in Hilton Head. We will get all of those to you as soon as we possibly can, but we do apologize for that, but we still want to recognize people. Cody Shook with Precision Flow Engineering is the first recipient this year. Active member of the marketing committee, major contributor to the APA Body of Knowledge tab chapter. They asked AABC to basically say, give us a whole bunch of information about test and balance that we can put and make available to all of our members. Give us the best summary of these different issues. It was a big undertaking, and he was a big part of that. He co-presented on a Tab Talk webinar late last year. He was a co-presenter of a AABC Lunch and Learn, healthcare facility compliance at the AABC Tab and Commissioning Seminar at the beginning of CX Energy just this past year. So for that and probably a number of other small things, we wanted to recognize Cody. So Cody, if you could come up, and unfortunately we don't have an award to hand you, but Mike has a hand to shake for you. So thank you, Cody.
Cody, thank you. Tremendous work.
Just hand him a scotch or something. We'll be fine. Where's that? Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Cody. There's kind of a familiar face here for this one. I'll run down the list here. Chairs the marketing committee. essentially chaired the AABC app development, including recruiting a ton of beta testers, volunteered at AABC's booth, Tab Talk webinars, co-presenter of a Lunch and Learn, and he actually did another Lunch and Learn just a couple of weeks ago that we didn't even add to the list. Chair of the marketing committee, again, and contributor of App of Body and Knowledge. We saw this list and we thought, you know, do we have to give Brian an award again? I mean, it is a really long list, and you know, I was a little on the fence about it, and then at the last board meeting, he showed up with, you know, really Hall of Fame hair, and that really just kind of, that was it. That put it over the top. So I'm sorry, we have to do it. We need a picture of this man for the meeting. So Brian, once again, in all seriousness, for everything that you do, he's another one of these guys that if you have a need, if he can possibly fill it, and you call him, he does it. He steps up. He's his constant energy, his enthusiasm, his optimism. It's infectious. He's a huge asset to AABC. So sincerely, thank you, and sincerely on the hair too. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for your leadership.
And then for the last award, this is something we're going to kind of establish as a precedent. You know, we have some pretty major committees. Some are kind of ongoing committees that take on, you know, small projects, which not to minimize any of those things, but you know, there's the big projects, there's exams, there's publications, there's things like this, and we want to set up the precedent that when a committee like that does that kind of work, that they're properly recognized for it, including by giving them an award. So this one goes to the AABC Technician Exam Committee. This is actually a subset of the board,
Yeah.
and I've called Mike Galen Richardson apparently on this. Well, you know.
I guess I'm just a younger.
There's worse names to be assigned to, right? I mean, there's a long list of worse names to be assigned for, so that's how much we think of you, Mike. But that committee of Mike Kelly, BJ Link, Doug Meacham, and Galen, they really it was literally hundreds of hours over a period of about a year and a half that they did. And this is completely separate from board work. This wasn't something that they spent half of a already standing board meeting on. This was all extra. Long conference calls, long meetings. It was a ton of work, a lot of homework essentially on their own. It was a tremendous amount of work. They did so much, and we now have 3 different versions of the exam. It helped us put it into and make it available to everybody much more easily. So we would like to ask the 4 of them to come up and accept an award as outstanding service for that committee's good work. So please come on up, all 4 of you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
So now to get to this year's Hall of Fame inductions. I'm not going to repeat everything that I said last year because frankly there's just not time. But it is intended to be, this is intended to be AABC's highest honor. And we're looking to honor both, you know, people from long ago that helped stand this association up in the first place and keep it going, as well as honoring people that are still around, still contributing, and that are here to receive that honor. Last year's, for the first induction, the board decided to honor the 3 generally acknowledged principal founders of AABC, or at least they tended to be grouped together, and that was Arnold Pearl, Walt Lipsky, and Taylor Cahoe. You can read about them in the Hall of Fame section on the ABC website. I encourage you to do so. If you haven't already, it's in the About section of the website. So this year, the board did decide that they wanted to reach back again and honor some additional people from those early years, because it was definitely a lot more than just those three. And they chose two more extremely important figures from AABC's early years as historical inductees. And the first of those is George Young with Test and Balance Corporation. You've got some information in your booklet again on that, and there's a little more information, a little bit lengthier on the website. And again, I encourage you to read that. But briefly, George is the founder of Test and Balance Corporation. Which was a company that was already well established before AABC, really became a thing, before AABC formed. And he helped found that organization in 1965 based on the experience he already had. He was a fan engineer, designed cooling towers. His experience with all that was peerless, and it really helped him help the association get things going in those early years. He developed the first Test and Balance, first TBE examination came from George. He graded that exam, much like his latter-day counterpart, George Ebert. He did the grading for that as well. And the other thing that he's most noted for is developed the industry's first cooling tower testing procedures. And again, this was back in the 1960s. And I'm told that the test was so associated with George specifically that some people just said, "Oh, the George Young test." It was that synonymous with him, and was once it became better known, was adopted by ASHRAE after he kind of put it out there into the industry. But Mr. Young's knowledge, his achievements, and his legacy are just up there with the greatest figures from AABC's early years, and in his case in particular, they're also very evident in a different way through the active, lifelong involvement and contributions of three of his sons to AABC. And I'm going to ask them to come up in a second, but that's Mike Young, who unfortunately was unable to be here this year, but Mike was an AABC president himself. And then Steve Young, another very active member, worked on standards and many other things. And Pat Young, who is where's Pat? There's Pat. Also very involved in AABC, speaking, various other things, got very involved on the commissioning side of things as well, frequent presence, you'll recognize their faces. But that's, that's coming down as a legacy from George, from their dad. And that's something that's really common in AABC. Mike mentioned how many, sons of members that we know well are in the audience today. And that's a great thing, and that's worth honoring as well. So to accept the induction of George Young into the AABC Hall of Fame, Steve, Pat, if you could come up. And I'm told, I'm sorry, his grandson Robert. Is Robert here? Oh, yes, Robert, please come up.
No, come on in.
So thank you, Steve, Pat, Robert, and again, thank you to George. He's eminently worthy of this honor. The second historical inductee that the board chose was George Coltis with Cahoe Air Balance Company. And Mr. Coltis is someone you may not have heard as much about, may not have heard his name. He was really, from talking to those who knew him, he was definitely not one for the spotlight. I didn't, I've been working with AABC for 20 some odd years, and I had only occasionally heard his name. He was just not one really for the spotlight. He wasn't president, he wasn't serving on the board. He was back in Cahoe's test lab. He was helping build the foundations of testing and balancing in AABC. He co-designed and built that test lab at Cahoe when he wasn't working out in the field. And he was seen to be the perfect complement to his business partner, Taylor Cahoe, who was much more gregarious, outgoing. He was more of the face. But Mr. Coltis was every bit as important. His dedication to what he was doing in that test lab, it helped advance AABC, and what was, again, it can be easy to forget about this, but we're talking about when TAB itself was young. It was still kind of a new thing. It was only a decade or a little more old. And I think it's important to remember that, like what pioneers some of these guys really were. But he served as chair of the technical committee that reviewed the entire 1973 version of the standards. He co-wrote many industry articles. I'm actually told in some cases he essentially ghost wrote them. He didn't even take the credit with the byline, but it was in fact him that was writing them. And he was also known as a gifted teacher and a mentor for balancing professionals. All of you know how important that is for your technicians. And he was remembered as a absolute stickler, good mentor, but a stickler for proper technique and accuracy and making sure things were done the right way. So for all that he contributed to AABC in its early years, we're going to induct George Coltis from Cahoe into the AABC Hall of Fame. And to accept that honor, we have Ralph Meacham, AABC past president, will come and accept that award.
Ray asked me if I'd say a few words. Taylor and George were both design engineers, and what they found was they were designing what they felt were proper systems, and they weren't working. So they actually started moonlighting on weekends and at night, and that's how they started Cahoe in early 60s, 63, I believe. I was a co-op student, and I joined Cahoe in 65. So I saw all the transitions. Taylor was the face of the company, but George contributed greatly to our success and the technical aspect of test and balancing. He also collaborated with George Young. They were very tight. They communicated a lot and shared ideas and techniques. So I feel very fortunate that I knew both of these gentlemen. And, I worked for Cahoe for 50 years, and I was really blessed in that aspect. So thank you for your support, and I hope you all are as successful as our company has been. Thank you.
Before we move into the modern nominees, I do want to note one thing for those of you following along. We inducted George Ebert as the first modern nominee last year, and we just inducted George Young and George Coltis. Any of you younger members, if you're not really wedded to your first name, maybe consider George. There's something going on there. So just a thought. So moving into the modern nominees, and I mentioned George, and again, he was the one chosen out of the 3 nominees last year by the membership with Fluid Dynamics. We were pretty convinced that George was happy about being inducted. He was, big smiles and everything during the speech that he gave last year at the meeting. But, you know, you never know. Maybe they're just putting on a show. And then his wife, Anita, sent us this picture. And, yeah, I think he was really honored. So just as a note for how that was received. But for the nominees this year, the board renominated Galen Richardson and Joe Baumgartner, who were the other two nominees last year. You've got a fuller write-up in the meeting program, and again, there's I think there might be even a little bit more than that on the website. But just to cover them briefly again, a little more brief than I did last year. For Galen, you know, 2 editions of the standards. He's started work on the next one. Constant advocacy within ASHRAE for the tab industry and for AABC for many, many years. Technical presentations he's given, speaker selection, his AABC board service, which is going to culminate starting right after this meeting with serving as president, the extensive development of training programs at his company's AABC endorsed training center, dozens of other things, small and large, that make him, I don't know if I want to say maybe, probably, likely, definitely, you know, maybe the most respected man in this industry. I mean, any questions? I mean, you know, this is an obvious Hall of Fame candidate. And then second, Joe Baumgartner, again from last year. Joe's humble. Joe's reserved. He's the rock on which Publishing Tab Journal has rested literally for 30 years, protecting AABC's reputation for technical accuracy by vetting the articles before they're printed. He also threw in a detour. He served on the board for 14 years, you know, including serving as president at the end. And George was see, I said George. And Joe was always, he was just a voice of reason, integrity, professionalism on the board. It's just who he is. It's how he's made. He's expressed multiple times to me since we started the Hall of Fame and his involvement with it. And he said that he can't quite believe that he's even being considered. And all I can say is that there wouldn't really be much point to even having an award like this if not for people like him. So that was our other nominee. So the voting went to the membership, again, as with last year. And just like last year, it was very close. And there were just a couple of votes separating the two. And when you look at, again, their resumes and how long they've been involved, how much they've done, that's really not surprising that it was a tough choice. You know, I had a longtime member telling me at the reception last night, he's like, I didn't vote because I couldn't make up my mind. You know, and I think that was the case for a lot of people. You could have just thrown a dart, flipped a coin. So as it happened, one of the two of them got slightly more votes this year, and the other one got slightly more votes last year. So the board looked at the results of all this, and when we talked about it recently, and what it seemed like essentially the membership was collectively telling them, and they just made a call, and therefore the 2022 Modern Era Hall of Fame inductee is actually Joe and Galen. Just a brief picture, Mike and I, because you know we were blessed with being local to Joe, we had an opportunity to bring his award to him this past Monday. And there's Mr. Baumgartner.
You on, Ray? Well, good morning, everybody. Unfortunately, I can't see the ballroom now, so I can't see any of you. But I understand it's a great turnout, and that's good to hear. And I don't want to take a lot of your time, but I do have a couple things that I'd like to say. First, I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I've always enjoyed the annual meetings, you know, meeting old friends, meeting new friends, and learning new things. So hopefully next year circumstances will permit me to do that. But in the meantime, my oldest son, Joel's there. And he and his brother, Josh, in the near future will be taking over the reins here and leading me out to pasture. So I'm very proud of both of them. And they will continue the excellence they helped establish at our firm and be an asset for AABC. The second thing I'd like to say is I want to congratulate George and Galen. Those two are two icons I've always respected. And as Ray mentioned last year and this year too, I'm still dumbfounded that I got mentioned in the same category with those two gentlemen. And after last year, I considered it one and done, but here we are. So words are never enough, but I'm truly honored to be recognized for this award. It's still amazing to me that the board nominated me, and even so that the membership confirmed that nomination. I am beyond humble, because all I've done for the last 50 years is go to work, do something I enjoy, and do it the best I can. And as George mentioned last year, it really is a privilege to participate in doing work for AABC, and it continues the legacy that we've all been entrusted with. So in that vein, I just want to say that the CHAB Journal is not a success because of me. It's a success because of all the members who've taken their own time to provide articles sharing their experience and knowledge. And I'm sure that's going to continue long after I'm gone. So in ending, as many of you know, I'm a man of few words. And I think with this diatribe, I probably used up my allotment for the rest of the year. But from the bottom of my heart, I do want to say thank you. And thank Ray and Mike for coming, taking their time personally to this to me. It means a lot.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe, thank you. You deserve it as much as anybody, and thank you for those heartfelt words. I did. Yeah, Joe and I. Yeah, if anybody didn't hear, Mike and I were able to bring the trophy to Joe on Monday this week because we were we were local, able to drive up there, and he's. I love Joe. I don't know what else to say. I love Joe.
I can say this.
Go ahead.
That was Columbus Day, or Indigenous Peoples Day, whichever we're celebrating. So with that, that day was 22 years?
21 years.
21 years previously was Ray's first day at AABC. And he was at a meeting, and Joe Bumgarner was there. So it was the first day he showed up for work. He met Ken, he met Joe, and then here we are 21 years later standing in his office on the same, celebrated day, giving Joe an award. And I've known Joe since I was 12 years old when my father was working with them together over at Weisman Incorporated. So my history with him goes way back. And to serve on the board with him and be a local competitor, and I call him a friend because he is, it was definitely meaningful.
Thanks, Mike. And with that, we do thankfully have Galen here with us today. And Galen, there's really nothing else to say. Congratulations. Well-deserved, as deserved as anybody could be for this award. So please come on up and accept it and say a few words.
Well, thank you very much. It is a great honor to be even mentioned with the people that have been inducted in the Hall of Fame. About 20 some odd years ago, I was very busy working on standards and everything, and I just decided it was time to devote all my energies to trying to make this industry better, trying to give us something that we can stand on, trying to make this association to be the best that's out there. And in doing that, with the help of Justin Garner over there, he had the vision to build a training center that's been endorsed by AABC. And Mike said earlier, if you're not growing, you're dying. Well, if you're not learning, you're definitely dying. And so we're developing training programs. We're developing more AABC training manuals. They're in the process of updating it right now. The standards being updated. And those are the things that's going to really help this industry. But it's going to be dependent on everybody in this room to at least endorse our mission and vision of AABC and try to be the best that's out there in total system balancing. And if we can do that, then by all means, this will be one of the best associations around, and we will be doing it right. And that's the key. If we can't do it right, don't do it at all. So I appreciate y'all's support in nominating me and voting for me, and it's a great honor, and I'm humbled to be here to be able to accept this award. Thank you very much.
Thank you to everybody, all the award recipients, for everything you do, all of you for being members. Thank you, everybody.